We're the book friends that think good.
What does this mean for our life, for our world? Yiggity yeet, my dude. I'm happy to speak. Always happy to think.
I don't know how to do that. I can look into that.
Makes you sound like a book friend that can think good.
It's Jack and it's Weston.
BFTTGs. Yeah.
Jack, I think good. Sometimes I good think, too.
Makes you sound pretty good.
We might want to make it more concise. We are going to attempt to grapple and answer 3 questions. Number 1, what did we learn? Number 2, what did we disagree with? And number 3, what are we going to do about it? I am ready to roll.
I'm in it. Weston, my book friend, tell me, what book is it that we're thinking good about today?
Today, we are talking about Chapter 8 in Field Guide to Lies and Statistics, Identifying Expertise.
Okay, get ready for a long list of subtitles on this one.
This was a big.
This is a very long chapter, maybe one of the longer ones that we've read. This whole chapter is about how to tell if somebody is an expert or if, in Daniel Levitin's favorite turn of phrase, they are a lying weasel.
Yeah.
So here are some ways that you can. Here are some things that you need to think about when it comes to expertise. What makes somebody an expert? First up, expertise is typically narrow. Another thing that he talks about is source hierarchy. Then he talks about website domains and how to gauge the veracity of things online. Who is behind it? That's a great question. And then institutional bias. Who links to the web page? So looking at secondary sources basically, or endorsements. Peer-reviewed journals, which is a good discussion about the same thing. Endorsements. Regulated authority, which to some extent talks about like consequences of misinformation or the absence of them. Is information current? Or has it been discredited? Is it copy pasted, reposted, or edited? Is there supporting information? Terminological pitfalls. So this is category errors or miscategorization. And that's it. And that is a lot of things to consider when you're looking at the expertise of somebody. But yeah, once again, Daniel Levitin pointing out all of the lying weasels around us. Yeah. Here's something I liked from the very opening. In the opening, he makes a distinction, and I guess this is kind of a learning for me. I just haven't quite parsed things in this way in the past, I suppose. But he makes the point that experts talk in 2 ways. They, in the first way, they review facts and evidence, synthesizing them and forming a conclusion based on evidence. This is the right way, he basically says. It's the way science is supposed to be: court trials, business decisions, medical diagnoses, military strategies. The second way is they just share their opinions, which is true. And he says the New York Times bestseller list is full of this stuff. And he gives tons of examples of people misusing that power. Like one of my favorite is a famous physicist who later said a bunch of racist stuff and people believed it because he was smart. And it's like, oh man, that's kind of brutal.
Yeah.
But yeah, Weston, what were your impressions of this chapter?
I don't know. It was just a lot more like reminders. I didn't feel like I learned a lot, like going through and looking at, what was the first subtitle? Like, expertise is typically narrow. Like, I definitely understand that and know that now. Especially like when I think about my career. And it's like, technically right now I'm certified to teach kindergarten through 8th grade. I would only consider myself an expert in 4th, 5th, and 6th grade. Like, if you threw me in a kindergarten classroom right now, even though I'm technically legally allowed to do it and like certified to do it, I am by no means an expert in kindergarten education.
Yeah.
So it's like, especially the further you get into a career, your expertise just becomes so narrow. Just because there's so many things to know, and you have to I guess you don't have to, but typically when you get deeper into a career, you're going to get deeper into like one specific aspect of whatever field of study you're in. So I definitely, that one resonated with me, I guess.
Yeah.
And I was just
Yeah.
like, yep, I definitely know that. And source hierarchy that one's a little bit, I feel like that is kind of, that's kind of eroded over the last decade. I feel like there's
Source hierarchy was my big pushback.
Yeah. Yeah. What did you have more to say about it?
I guess I could jump into my pushback
Yeah,
about it, but
jump
yeah,
into
I think it's both eroded, but also I just don't necessarily think that it's a helpful indicator. I mean, it's a lazy way of trusting experts, because the reality is like if somebody says something that's true, it's true. Somebody says something that's false is false, and the source literally does not matter.
I would argue actually the opposite of that. I would say that
Really?
the in his traditional sense, the way he talks about the New York Post, like in my view, the bigger the source is, the less credible it is because of other factors that he talks about later in the chapter, where it's like they have more money coming from specific places funding them. So they're only going to say certain things that benefit those people so they can continue to get that money. Like bigger sources to me are big red flags of
exactly. He also says something erroneous, I think, when he's talking about web domains. Because he says the cdc.gov or nih.gov probably have more accurate information about most medical issues than a .com because they have no financial interest. And I was like, they have no financial interest?
Yeah,
they have nothing but financial interest. I was like, that's just blatantly wrong to say that.
Yes.
So that was a big pushback for me where I was like, dude,
I had a learning in that section
if you're just gonna trust the .gov because it's free of bias, like think again.
Totally, dude. I actually learned in that section, the website domain section, I was like, I think I've never seen a website other than .edu, .com, .gov, and .org and .net. I've seen .net, and like I've seen other ones like from European countries like .eu and .ca.
Well, there's tons.
For Canada.
I mean, there's so many now because of all of these free websites. Like .io is a big one now. .shop.
I haven't seen that one.
.commerce.
I hadn't seen like .nyc or .management. I was like, what? Really? I guess I just never like considered that because I didn't think that you could change that part of it easily,
Yeah.
I don't know a ton about web design, so
yeah. That section also had a good learning for me. He uses the term caveat emptor, and I was like, oh, is this just more web speak? This must be a computer term. I looked it up. It's Latin.
Where is that? Did I just miss that?
Did you miss that? It says others include .net, .nyc, .management, which carry no restrictions. Caveat emptor, best electrical service .nyc might actually be in New Jersey.
Oh yeah, I saw that. I was trying to rush because I was in kind of a rush there, and I was just like, I don't know what that is. Doesn't sound important.
Yeah, it means buyer beware.
Buyer beware. Okay.
Yeah.
Shame on me. Good on you, Jack.
Oh, thanks, man. Thanks. I was literally going to skip over it too. I was like, this is like a space filler or a typo or something.
C'est la vie.
Yeah.
Just throws it in there. But then that connects to the next section where he talks about who's behind it. And like that's like our pushback on the other thing.
Yeah. It's funny. Like it's funny the blind spot that people have with that question. Because of our brain's ability to fill the gaps with things that we want to believe, where we say like, I see this a lot when I'm discussing politics with people. I feel like this comes up all the time where it's like, oh, well, that's fueled, but they'll like talk about like, oh, all these special interests support this thing. And then you're like, well, what about your thing with all of these special interests? And they're like, no, that's not a thing.
Yeah. Yeah, those aren't corrupt. The other side's corrupt. I mean, I love his example here of like the Congress website, or the campaign website that's literally just deceiving everyone who goes to it, and they're just funneling money to the other candidate.
Yeah.
Like, dude.
Apparently there's a lot of that happening right now.
Oh, I don't doubt that.
Yeah. Yeah. What?
Then he talks
What?
about institutional bias,
Yeah.
which is kind of just like the same thing as before. If I could get on a small soapbox now,
Yeah.
just a little one, dude.
Okay. Soapbox it up.
This is why unions are important.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, Amazon, I think, really, that was a huge win for Amazon squashing that union in the South. I mean,
Huge win for Amazon, but who is Amazon, right? I don't know. I know that there are negatives with unions, but I think overall they are
I'm not. Oh,
so
by the way,
much better.
I'm not saying that's a good thing
Oh
that it
yeah,
was
no,
a
I know.
win for Amazon. I'm saying that it's like,
You're saying it's a win for Amazon, not the people.
yeah,
Right.
exactly.
No, I know.
Yeah.
But I just run into so many. Well, I guess because recently I'm in a teachers union, obviously, or maybe not obviously, but I'm in a teachers union
Teachers are unionized. Yeah.
for the most part, in the good states, I would argue. But
Mm.
yeah, I just went through a strike a couple weeks ago, and like, yeah, definitely, like we had a lot of community support, but then there were some other people that were like, flipping us off. We had some guys driving by cars and spitting at us. We had some guy drive by and say, "Stop extorting my grandchildren." So, yeah, there's just, I mean, I know people have very different feelings about it, but, yeah, I mean, unions are, I mean, especially, I think, I mean, I don't know, I can't think of many jobs where a union isn't great. Because every job I can think of, like teachers, we need it for a lot of reasons. But like the other jobs that I think it's great for, are like plumbers, electricians, guys doing dangerous work, right?
Yeah. I mean, here's something that I would argue about this. In the Bible, Paul talks about principalities and powers of the air. Like, we don't fight against flesh and blood, we fight against actually bigger forces. I think like institutional evil is something that we see rampant in our society. There's tons of institutional evil
I think
by
it's more specific than that.
nameless, faceless corporations, and they are run by people. Some of them like with severely greedy tendencies and stuff like that. But it becomes bigger than any individual. When you get like multiple people with like a little bit of that going on, and then like boom, it becomes this thing that's like, yeah, it may not be anybody specific at Pfizer's fault for this or that, or Walmart or whatever. It's like, it's just this thing that like spins out of control.
Dude, I gotta hold on. I know I didn't plan on talking about this, so give me a second. I gotta find something. Just speaking about like greed and corporations and the billionaires at the top, right? Because like I've definitely gotten into conversations with some more conservative people I know that like believe in the free market and capitalism, all that. And I think it is great.
Sure.
I think it's great to an extent. I definitely think it's a good thing.
Oh yeah.
But billionaires, if you make $156,000 a year, which right now is triple the median income in the United States.
Okay.
So you're making triple the median. If you're making
156. And we learned that median is an average, but not the only average.
Right.
It's probably not the mean.
It's not the mean. Definitely not the mean, because there's so many extreme outliers at the top, right? Where it's like there's definitely a set number at the bottom. You can make zero. But there's not really but anyways.
So 156,000.
If you make
this
that,
is the number.
It would take you 6,410 years to earn $1 billion. Think about that, dude.
Wow.
If you make the federal minimum wage, the federal minimum wage,
sure,
it would take you nearly 70,000 years to make $1 billion.
Wow.
A billionaire, I mean, this graphic has a little opinion at the end, and I agree with it. A billionaire is not working 70,000 times harder than the person at the bottom.
Right.
And they're definitely not working 6,000 times harder than the person that's near the top in the corporation. Like there's just no. So then I got in this argument with someone close to me about this concept.
Yeah.
And they were saying, well, what are they supposed to, like, what? They generated $1 billion. What are they supposed to do? Give it all back? And I said, no, that difference, that should go to the workers. Like, they're not paying the company. They're not paying the employees what is a fair wage for what the company is making. Like,
Or they
they're
should get
just
kickback.
scraping it all
They
the
should get
time.
bonuses, rewards. You know,
Like you wonder where the extra
incentive.
money. Oh, well, it should just go to that person. There, no, it should go to the people that are doing the
Yeah.
work. But
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah.
sorry. I'll get
Yeah.
off my
No,
I'll get
I
off my
think
union soapbox.
no. I mean, I think this is actually a really good point. Like the
We've definitely
The
gotten
free-
off the rails on the chapter.
yeah, the free market and totally unregulated income are totally different concepts.
Yes.
Right? Like I'm a very, very strong proponent of free market economy. But I'm also a big proponent of being content with less, which is something I've talked about on this podcast several times. I think like, you know, I heard a really good TED talk by an architect who was talking about this. Like his company has flat structure. Everybody is paid the same. Him and all of his 9 employees. And like, yeah, he's a senior architect. Yes, he owns the firm, but like they're all doing the same amount of work. So why don't they just get paid the same? And he's like, plus, here's the deal. We all get paid a really good salary because we're architects in a major city. Like that's like a novel concept. And the question for me is why? Like, why is that so challenging?
Well, I don't necessarily. I think it'd be hard to do with a bigger company with like everyone making the same, because I definitely think there's parts to play.
Mm-hmm.
But I definitely think that it should be closer in value.
I do think that was an interesting example though, because like their administrative assistant in the office gets the same cut, and it's like
dope to work.
They're very cool, but like it makes sense because like without like it's an integral part of the ecosystem that makes this possible.
Yep.
It's like, wow. I mean, just an interesting concept.
Well, think about like feeling valued at your job, like knowing that you're making the same amount as everyone else. Like, dude,
yeah.
I mean, that's something I feel, that I know a lot of teachers feel too. Is like, dude, I'm the one dealing with 30 kids that are like throwing chairs, having tantrums. Like I'm the one getting them emotionally off the cliff. And some guy in an office that just comes around and says, "Oh, you should do this lesson differently. That's why you didn't get the test scores." Gets paid twice what I make, and he's not dealing with it. Like, I totally get it.
I think, man, if there was more of a perspective, and this doesn't come into like economic systems at all, really, because free market could work this way just as any other economic system could. But if more people had the perspective that a rising tide rises all ships, and really believed that, and like worked for that, like we would see something different in the world, I think. But that's not, dude, it's hard. This is not what people think.
It's really hard to get to that point.
Well, it's because it's not. That's because it doesn't. Like it rises a ship, exactly. Everybody else sinks and drowns.
The whole. I mean, I thought it was. I don't know. That's a whole other topic, but like the whole concept of like trickle down economics. I'm like, that's what you want? A trickle? I'm not trying to get a trickle. I'm not working my ass off for a trickle.
Like, right.
But anyways,
let it rain. Let it rain.
Yeah.
We're back to Along Came Polly. Yeah. Okay, so pushbacks on this.
Bro, I have
so many
speech.
Yeah.
So if you want me to go off, I will go off.
Tell me, where do you push back?
Go through like peer-reviewed journals. I think those are, like he says, I agree with him. That's like kind of the best that we've developed so far. But he does acknowledge it's not like perfect. Regulated authority. This is another one where I just disagree, dude. But maybe I'm just too anti-government, anti-Fed for this, because I'm like, dude, as soon as someone gets central control, like this is why we fought a few years ago about net neutrality, right? Because he talks about on the web there needs to be a regulated authority to verify all this information, and I'm like, please, as soon as there is that, there's going to be like everything's going to be compromised on the internet. As soon as there's a central authority, are you kidding me? Sorry, I felt strongly about that one. And then, is the information current and discredited? I also disagreed with this, and I don't know what he's looking at, but he said web pages seldom carry a date, graphs, charts, or tables that don't reveal the time period. And that's just not been my experience. Like most of the websites, I mean, at least the ones that I trust, I can see when it was uploaded and when it was updated.
Yeah.
So,
I think this falls into the criticism of like uh he sounds in the section about the internet like people who criticize social media. It's like, oh, it's all vapid and dumb. It's like, I think you're not a social media user. I kind of like push back against this. Like, how much do you use the internet?
He sounds like an old man saying, "Get off my
Yeah,
lawn."
yeah, yeah.
Especially with the way he talks about dude, this was one of my big pitfalls too, or one of my big pushbacks, where he is asking us as readers, as people, to spend how many hours verifying all this information? And I think you brought it up last chapter with a great question. It's like, do I actually care? And yeah, like we're talking like the impracticality of what he's saying people should do is so much to me, so much. Just an old crotchety man just being like, yeah, we need to have more verification. And it's like, dude, shut the fuck up. Like, you don't know what you're talking about. I don't know. So that kind of leads me to my big pushback if you want me to get into it.
Okay.
I wrote down that by the end of this chapter, I was getting very, very tired of the cynicism and the pessimism that you alluded to, like we've been talking about throughout the book, with no light at the end of the tunnel. He never mentions a light at the end of the tunnel.
What's the upside?
Yeah, he does a horrible job of making me feel like I'm about to learn something new. And he does a terrible job of making me want to read the next chapter.
Right.
Each chapter is just so bleak. Each chapter is just hopeless. And I'm starting to feel like I'm not really learning much from this book, and I'm being made fun of for being such a buffoon, right? Like he's kind of just like yelling at people that like, why is everyone believing this? And I don't know, a second piece to my pushback here after this chapter is I just don't like how Levitin puts all the blame on us as like consumers of the information rather than like the organization, the companies that are intentionally misleading people. Like, why don't you direct your anger with the system at them? They're the ones creating it rather than us, the reader, and saying we need to do more. I don't got time. I'm making minimum wage and it's taken me 70,000 years to make $1 billion. All right.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know. What else do you got for this chapter? Because I'm done, dude. I am done with this.
I mean, there is a lot of language, though. To be fair, he continually calls these people lying weasels and unscrupulous hucksters and other, cute little turns of phrase like that.
True. I just don't think because he doesn't go in as hard as I want him to on those people.
I do think what he's trying to do is educate, to point out, like, here are all of the ways that this happens. Like we talked about, it's a field guide. It's not really intended to be like it's not like here's a cure to lies and statistics. It's like here's all the problems that you'll encounter. And that's really what I think he's doing. There is that unfortunate need, though, to say like, okay, well, what am I going to do with this? Like, it's kind of like an information overload a little bit sometimes, like even chapter by chapter. Take the whole book and you've got so much to consider that it feels totally overwhelming. Totally. It feels totally daunting and impossible to keep up with the rate of information exchange in a metered and like impartial manner that allows you to like coldly calculate the veracity of everything that's coming at you. Yeah. And that seems to be what he's advocating, which is like, okay, well, that's just naive, which is to your point. It does push me to ask that question of like, well, what do you do with this? Yeah. So like, I mean, given your feelings and your response to this, what are you feeling? What is it that you can do with this whole?
I literally, the only thing I wrote 4 words. I guess I'll keep reading.
Nice.
Because I want to. This is how I'm feeling now, but this is chapter 8, and there's 16 or something chapters.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's a whole other part. So I need to find out. I need to find out if he does ever give us hope. But man, at this point, I am feeling down. I am feeling lost and hopeless. And yeah. Yeah, so
Mhm.
I was just like, I just got to keep reading and see if he gives me anything, because I was thinking about how he talks about, or I guess how we were talking about in chapter 6, I think, with the medical decision making thing where he talks about the
Mhm.
percentages. I'm like,
Yeah.
dude, give me a percentage chance on something with these.
Mhm.
Give me a sliver of hope,
Mhm.
or I would like it more even if you left each chapter with like just one sentence. I was like, we'll figure out how to handle this later, or like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um, I just feel like
Uh,
he doesn't even give us that really. Like,
yeah, like, I mean, like he does have this phrase, and this well sums up and like justifies the point that you're making here, where he says, the burden is on all of us. This is on page 148. The burden is on all of us to make sure we're reading the original unadulterated information, not someone's mashup of it. And I would argue that in this age of information, that is nearly impossible to do
yeah,
for the average person. Like, one of the things that all of the like news controversy over the course of like 2018 to today has showed us is like, uh, you can't fact check things because there's so much special interest out there. There's so much like, I don't know, so much milieu. Like, you can't really you can't fact check everything.
and even
So
if
you
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 even
do
if you
have to ask the
go,
question.
yeah,
You do have to like just develop a filter. I guess this is my like, what do I do with this? Along with that same takeaway that I had last time, which was, do I care about this? I guess my filter for this is just to simply ask the question more often, who says?
mm-hmm. It's a good one.
Who says? Like I hear something I either like or don't like, I go, who says? Which was a really important lesson for me in my intro to philosophy class, which is something I come back to over and over. It was just like a mind blowing class for me in college, but just asking those simple questions like, why would a person think that? Um, Simple things like that, I think, are good solutions to these things that allow us to be skeptical without being hopeless.
Yeah.
Because the reality is that most of the time there is an answer to that. Like, well, who says? It's like, oh, the CDC. Why does the CDC say that? Well, because they're getting kickbacks from Pfizer, right? Like that's why they say. Um, so you know, why would somebody think this? And it's like, oh, because all they listen to is, you know, Fox News, or all they listen to is CNN. Like, why would somebody think this? Like, all they listen to is Joe Rogan Experience. Like, that's why they think that way. Um, Having that answer helps a lot with identifying what people think and who to believe and who to trust. I mean, because the reality is like, it's not just like, do you believe these facts? It's, do you trust this source? Right. And that's a subjective question, not an object. It doesn't have an objective answer. I don't think.
I think you're right. I think you're right. I think it leads me to lean into more stoicism, which I know based on this episode does not seem like I practice at all or very well.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like I'm pretty stoic, uh, unless you just push the right buttons, and then I'm just
Yeah.
I'm just gone. Then I'm off the
Yeah.
rails. But yeah, I don't know.
My wife sent me this thing the other day on Instagram. That was like a meme sort of. It's like, I have two modes. It's like uh unbendingly uncompromising, and it is what it is. And she
It's
was like,
funny,
you.
dude.
And I was like, yep.
Yeah, my wife and I were talking last night as we were like going through all those old report cards and stuff of mine. Like, she was like, "Yeah, you just like you're so, or I tend to be either like completely on board with something or completely against it." Yeah, it's hard to find middle ground because like when you do land on an opinion, I don't know. I feel like I'm pretty good about like staying cohesive with my like
Mhm.
thought, where it's like I will only accept this if it actually fits into the whole framework, right? And
Yeah.
if it doesn't fit with my experiences that I've had in my life, or with something that I have seen to be true, or I think is true, it's really hard for me to accept it. Like, I feel like everything needs to be cohesive, because I'm like always on the edge. Like, I'm always very I never want to be a hypocrite about anything, right? I never want to accept this belief but then also have this belief, and they're completely in conflict. Like, I want everything to be cohesive, and that's just hard to do. It's hard. And like you said, in this world of information and misinformation, it is hard to stay cohesive in your entire philosophy.
One of my favorite Mark Twain quotes: "People are walking contradictions."
God, Mark Twain. He is full of them, dude.
He said everything.
Yeah. One of my favorite Mark Twain quotes. What did I even say? Mark Twain quotes.
Well, maybe that's one of the takeaways too. Is, can we not be the lying weasel?
Yeah.
Like, maybe try, like, work hard at that.
Yeah.
That be
Just
consistent, cohesive, reasoned, connected, grounded.
Thank you for joining us, book friends. Next week on the BFTTG pod, Jack and Weston, they're thinking good some more with you, our book friends. Check out the show notes or the description, comment section for a link to the book and any articles that we talk about in the show. Bye-bye, book friends.
Bye for this time, guys.